What I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through a demonstration of SAP Business One, and in particular we're going to focus on the campaign management functionality. In the previous videos that you may have already had an opportunity to look at, you might have seen that we have customer relationship management functionality right throughout the entire system. And a key component of the customer relationship management is the ability to maintain sales opportunities. What I'm going to show you is how you can use the SAP Business One application, build a marketing campaign, execute that campaign, and monitor the campaign to see which campaigns are the most effective, and then of course to link your sales opportunities to those campaigns and be able to manage and monitor everything that you do that relates to that campaign. So let's get started. So what we're looking at right now is the user interface of SAP Business One. And you'll recall from the previous videos that we did have this sales opportunity functionality. And this is where you're able to record all of the sales opportunities that your salespeople are working on. And that's great, but what we really want to do is go one step back from that and look at how did we generate those sales opportunities. And the way most sales opportunities get generated is with some kind of marketing campaign. So we have campaign management, and that is here in the business partner functionality. And you'll see we have two different ways that you can build and execute your campaigns. The first way is via generating a campaign from scratch. The second way is to use the campaign generation wizard, but I'm going to show you how we create a campaign from scratch just using the standard campaign functionality first. Then we'll go and look at the campaign generation wizard. So you can see right now, this is my standard campaign entry screen. It's automatically detected that it's a new campaign. I can go back and view an existing campaign if I want, but right now I'm going to create a new campaign. So what do I want to do? I want to execute a campaign now where I'm going to target some of our distribution customers. So I can give this campaign a name, something that's meaningful to your people, and then you just need to keep referring back to that same campaign, either by the campaign number or by this campaign name. And of course you can look up that campaign by either of those fields. So I'm going to call this our spring distribution campaign. And then I can select what kind of campaign is it going to be. Is it an email campaign, a mail blast, a fax campaign, and so on? Is it a call down campaign? Is it a series of meetings? Whatever the case may be. And of course, I can also specify this campaign type of other, and that gives me the ability to cover a whole range of generic campaigns which I might execute throughout my marketing processes. In this case though, I'm going to do an email campaign. Now, the next thing I want to specify is who is the owner. And of course, everywhere through SAP Business One, you have the capability to do these lookups. So I'm going to flag right now that I am the owner of this campaign. Now, everywhere in SAP Business One, just a reminder, everywhere where you see these golden arrows, you can click and that will take you down to the underlying information. So this is all of my information. As the campaign owner, you can always view that if you need to. So the next thing I'm going to specify is who is my target group. Now this is where you start selecting the customers or prospective customers that you want to target. Now those prospective customers for this campaign, they can be customers that exist inside your SAP Business One database, or you can import a list from some external system, and I'm going to show you both of those options. Now, I can pre-build a target group. Why would you do that? Well, we do that and it makes it easy for you to ensure that you have consistency across all of your campaigns, so that when you're looking at a target group, in this case distribution customers, you always have a consistent set of customers that meet that criteria. So you can see I already have 3 target groups that have been predefined. I have my distribution accounts, I have my high-tech customers, and I have my large accounts. If I need to change that selection at all I need to do is double click on the entry. So this is now asking me, do I want to take the existing selection criteria and replace it? Well, right now I've got no selection criteria anyway, so it doesn't matter. It's just a warning to make sure you don't make a mistake. And I'll say yes. And you can now see what it's done is it has pulled in my customers that belong to this target group. Now what I've done with my sample data, rather than working with thousands and thousands of records, I've tried to keep it fairly simple so it's easy to read the screens and you can follow along with what I'm doing. So that's why right now I've just selected 2 customers in my distribution target group. You might have 2, you might have 2002. SAP Business One will cope with those volumes. So you can now see that I'm going to execute this campaign, and I'm going to execute this campaign between the starting date of the 27th of September, which is today, and my campaign is going to run for approximately 1 month. So I can click on my date control widget, and I can select that this campaign is going to end on October the 31st. All right, because it's really focused on that one period. Then I can put in some remarks about the campaign. In this case, I'm going to say, this is our distribution spring catalog campaign. And then I can put additional information. And one of the things you'll notice with SAP Business One is down at the bottom of the screen, down in this area here, whenever I'm highlighting a particular field, it will always show you how many characters you have to work with. So right now I've got 254 characters to work with, so I'm going to say it's my distribution spring catalog campaign, which includes email blast with attached PDF based catalog and web URL for data capture. So you can put as much information in there as you want that's meaningful to you, as long as you don't exceed that 254 characters. And what you're going to see is if you do, down here SAP Business One will always give you system status messages. So that's fine. I'm happy with that. I'll go ahead now and I'll choose add, and you can see down the bottom of the screen there in green there is one of our status messages. That operation has now been completed successfully. Now you might be sitting there thinking, okay, well that's great, you've recorded the details of the campaign. Well, how do you actually go ahead and execute the campaign? How do you go and generate the emails? Well, I'm going to talk about that in a second, because there's a number of different ways you can do it. You can either generate the emails from inside SAP Business One, or perhaps you might be using some kind of third-party email management tool. For example, you might be using Constant Contact, you might be using Aweber, you might be using Emma, or any of those other third-party tools that are available to manage that. With SAP Business One Campaign Management, we can integrate with every single one of those. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of a snapshot shortly of showing you And I'm going to give you a little snapshot shortly of how we integrate using Constant Contact, because I have a Constant Contact account which I use, and I'm going to show you how we integrate with that. So that's our campaign created. Now what I'd like to do is show you a similar process where I'm going to use the campaign generation wizard. So now let's take a look at the campaign generation wizard, and I'm going to show you how we've built a guided step through which will take you through the entire process. Now remember, one of the key things we've done with SAP Business One is we've tried to make the software as easy to use as possible. And that's the purpose of these wizards. We've got wizards in various areas through the software, and again, they're just there to guide you through the process. You don't have to use them, but they do make things a little simpler. So you can see here I have my campaign generation wizard. I'm going to go to the campaign generation wizard, and you'll see it's just explaining to you what's happening. It's going to step you through all of the different steps that you need to take to create a promotional campaign. So I'll say next. Now, It's going to ask me, do I want to create a new campaign or do I want to create a campaign based on an existing one? So I can take one campaign and I can create duplicates. How I might use that, let's say for example, I want to execute the same campaign with multiple different customer groups. Because of course, as you probably know, one of the secrets to executing effective campaigns is to make sure not only do you choose the right target group, but you also choose the right number. You should only choose as many as you can potentially follow up. Let's say, for example, your campaign is wildly successful. You don't want to be in a situation where you can't handle all of the customers who are expressing interest and wanting to talk to you about that. Of course, that's your main goal, is to execute campaigns that are wildly successful, but we just want to make sure that you don't have too much to handle at any given point in time. Now, when it comes to volume of transactions, SAP Business One isn't going to have any problem handling that. If you decide it makes sense for you to execute a campaign where you're mailing 20,000 people, that's fine. SAP Business One's going to allow you to do that. But again, best practice, keep your campaigns down to a manageable number. So let's give our campaign a name. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to execute a campaign for my high-tech customers. All right. So I'll call this my high-tech, and for the sake of the exercise, I'm going to call it my high-tech web promo. So I'm going to run a campaign here that's going to incorporate a couple of different touch points. Maybe I'm going to send an email. Maybe I'm going to have a dedicated web page where I want people to come and register, and then they'll be eligible for the particular offer that's in the campaign. So that's that. Do I want to make any remarks? Well, I can. And again, remember, these are exactly the same fields that I filled out in the campaign creation function before. I'm just doing it through a wizard. So I'll say next. And now it's going to ask me, all right, tell me a little bit more about that campaign. Who is your target group? And again, I can look that target group up, or I can create a new target group. In this case, I'm going to select my existing target group, which is my high-tech customers, and I'm going to flag myself once again as the owner, although you can obviously allocate different people as the owner. So I'm the owner. When's my campaign going to start? Well, this campaign, I'm going to run this campaign in November, because oftentimes when we do our campaign planning, we plan 1, 2, 3 months in advance, and obviously SAP Business One can manage that. So I'm going to run this campaign from the 1st of November right through to the end of December. So again, I'll just choose December in my date widget, and I'm going to run this right through to the 31st of December. So that's fine. So now I can specify the campaign details. I've selected a target group, and the target group is going to determine which of my business partners get selected for this. Although what I can do is I can go in here, I can click on my ellipsis, and I can specifically choose which of my partners I want to work with. In this case, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to let my target group do the selection criteria. Now, one of the other things I can do is I can click on Campaign Template. And what it will allow me to do is navigate out to a location on my file storage system where I have a campaign template document created. So I can then select that campaign template if I want to, and I can bring that in. I'm not going to do that at this particular point in time. I'm just going to go on to my next step. And you can see right now, as far as the campaign generation wizard is concerned, these are the customers that it is decided that it's going to target. And you can see right now, my business partner group is high tech. So it's chosen just the ones that I want from that target group. But what I can do now is I can go in here and I can click on add, and I can now say, you know what, that's not enough. I think I might now also add some other customers to this campaign. And of course, I can pick the customer groups that I have. So I can say, you know what, I've decided I want to send this to all of my customers, or I can narrow it down and I can just select a subset of customers by name. In this case, I'm going to say I want all of my customers. The other selection criteria I have is I can go in here into my properties, and as you may be aware, in SAP Business One, we can have up to 64 user-definable properties. So you can use those for flagging all kinds of different criteria. Do they belong to an industry group? How did they get to hear about your company? All kinds of different properties. And then, of course, you can use that to select those target customers for this particular campaign. Again, not going to worry about that. That's everything that I want. So I'll say OK. And now you can see it's gone ahead and it's selected all of the customers in my system that I want to execute this campaign to. Now, it's also going to create records for these customers against these campaigns, and I can see who do I want to allocate this particular follow-up activity to. Do I want to allocate it to a user in the SAP Business One system? Or do I want to allocate it to an employee of the company? Now you might be thinking, what's the difference between those two? You can have users of the system who aren't company employees. So let's say, for example, you're working with a telemarketing agency. You can record those telemarketing agency representatives, and you can allocate each one of these opportunities that are generated in this campaign to that telemarketing agent for them to do the follow-up. But in this case, I'm going to leave it as user. But when I do that, you'll see it gives me then the ability to select from the user list. But if I select, I want to allocate this to an employee, what you'll see is the list is much, much smaller. Okay. Again, let's go back. I'm going to allocate that to a user, and we're going to leave it as Jason Butler. A couple of other things I can do, of course, is I can go across here, I can see all of the additional information that's coming in that relates to that particular customer. So I've got a full view of all of that, all of the underlying information for every single one of those business partners. Now, that's great. That's when I'm working with existing customers. But what if I've bought a list? How do I handle that? Well, very, very simple. All I do is I go across here and you'll see I have an import button. I simply click on the import button and it's going to ask me, well, what kind of data am I importing? So I'm going to import a target group. Now let's say, for example, I bought a list, and part of the rules of using that list, I'm only allowed to use it for one specific campaign. Well, that's fine, because what I can do is I can create a specific target group that is related to that list for that campaign. That way I can make sure I don't violate my terms of usage for my list. The terms might be you can only use it once, and occasionally list brokers will seed their lists with test records so that they can make sure that you're not violating those usage terms. So again, Business One's going to help you make sure that you are compliant with all of the rules required of utilizing that list. Now, I will then specify my template, and I can specify pre-built data import templates if I want to, or I'm able to go in here and just specify, you know what, each one of these columns in my file, and it's expecting a comma separated values file, which is the standard way that most list brokers will provide you their lists. I can say, okay, column 1 in the field contains the code, column 2 contains a business partner name, column 3 contact person, and so on. So I'm able to quickly and easily map that information through. And I can give you an example of that a little further down in our demonstration. But right now, don't want it to be too complex, so I'm not going to do an import from Excel of those records. I'm just going to say next. And now it's going to say, what do you want to do with that campaign? Do you want to save the campaign and just exit because I'm not ready to go any further? Or do you want to generate an external list? Do I want to send an email using Microsoft Office Outlook? Do I want to send emails using the internal SAP Business One emailing system, which you might recall from previous demonstrations, links directly into any SMTP or Simple Mail Transfer Protocol compatible email system. So whether you're using Microsoft Exchange, you're using Notes Mail, you're using maybe some open source mailing tool, SAP Business One has the ability to integrate to all of those. So I can say, send the email using the Business One mail. I can generate a fax, or I can generate a URL, which is then going to have those links available to me. In this case, I'm going to say, let's generate an external list. I'll say next. Now it's asking me, give me the name of the file that you want to create. And so the system automatically picks up my file location from the SAP Business One configuration. I give it a name. I'll just leave it as the campaign generation wizard so it's easy to find. And then you can see I can hit save. It's going ahead. It's generating the record. It's asking me, do you want to export currency symbols if there's any dollar values included in any of the fields that I've decided I want to export? And I'll say, no, I don't want to export those currency symbols. Of course, I could do that. As you might be aware, SAP Business One supports multiple languages, multiple currencies, and of course, multiple companies. That's why it's important sometimes to do that. But in this case, I'm going to say no. I'll say OK. Let the system run, and now you can see every time we execute a wizard, it's always giving you some feedback on exactly what happened. So it's saying the save operation was completed successfully, and campaign number 3 has now been created. There's my golden arrow again, so I can drill down to that campaign, and now I can see here it is, campaign number 3, my high-tech web promo. I can see that it's starting on the 1st of November and running through to the 31st of December. I can see all of the business partners who were selected as part of this campaign. And now what I'm able to do is I'm now able to start drilling down and looking at every single one of these records. So when I'm doing a campaign follow-up, for example, I can now go and start generating my sales opportunities. Let's take a look at one of those records for the sake of the exercise. Let's say I am a telesales representative. I'm doing my follow-up activities for this particular campaign, and I'm on the phone to SG Electronics. So I can now drill down to SG Electronics, and if I create a new sales opportunity for SG Electronics, not only is it going to link the sales opportunity to that customer, it's also going to link the sales opportunity to the campaign. So I can immediately see how effective my campaign has been by doing statistical analysis reports on my campaign. So you can see, if I go and look here, I have all of my information about my customer, and I can see all of the underlying information about my customer, and I can drill down, and you'll see I also have an existing sales opportunity in here. I can also go in here and I can create additional documents. So when I click on the You Can Also function, it will give me the ability to see what are the other activities that are related to this particular business partner. But that's fine. I don't want to look at any of those other ones. In this particular instance, I'm happy with that, so I'm just going to close it down. So now I'm back in my campaign, and let's say I do want to create that sales opportunity. How do I do it? I simply scroll across, and by the way, let's say, for example, I don't want to do all that scrolling. I can click here and maximize my window so I can see as much information as possible. So I'll scroll over. What do I want to do? I want to flag that this particular customer did respond. I can then say that I want to create one of these things. It might be a sales opportunity, or maybe they responded and the response generated a sales quote, or even a sales order, or even better, an invoice. So I've got the ability to maintain the linkage between the campaign and all of those activities, so I can then start generating reports showing the actual revenue generated by the campaign, which at the end of the day is really what you're interested in doing. But in this case, I'm going to generate a sales opportunity. Now, I can go and link it to an existing sales opportunity that's been created, or I can create a new one. So in this case, here's all the existing sales opportunities that are there, so I can link it. In this case, I'm going to say, no, I'm going to create a new sales opportunity. So who's the contact person? I'm going to leave that blank. What's my opportunity name? So I'm talking to John Smith, and I'm talking to him about my sales activity, about my campaign that he's responded to. I can give it a name, so I'll give this opportunity a name, and I'll say it is my high-tech web promo opportunity. And it might help if I can type correctly, so I'll just put a W back in there. The next thing I want to do, I want to maybe allocate it to a business partner territory, or I want to allocate it to a sales employee. Well, again, remember, I might be a telesales person, but now I want to allocate it to one of my field sales representatives. So in this case, I'll say, yep, I'm going to allocate this one to Sophie Clogg. But I can specify that even though Sophie is the sales representative, I'm going to allocate it to a manager as well. So I'm going to allocate it in this particular instance to Tom Brady. So Sophie is my sales rep and Tom Brady is her manager. So that's all good. Now I can start putting in additional information, and this is back in the standard sales opportunity area. Now, just in case you haven't had a chance to take a look at that demonstration video, let me just quickly cover some of these key points. I can specify, well, I think this is going to close in 30 days from now, so it automatically calculates that date. Based on the conversation I've had with the customer, I think this sales opportunity is going to be worth $10,000. And then it puts a weighting on that sales opportunity, because in our sales methodology, we have a number of different stages. So right now, this is just going into my first stage, which has a very low likelihood weighting. But I can override that. I think that it's a very high chance that we're going to close this opportunity. Or I might use binary forecasting. What do I mean by binary forecasting? It's either going to close or it's not. They're either going to spend $10,000 or they're going to spend nothing. So I can just go in and override that as well. So you can see it will go backwards and forwards and recalculate some of these things for us, or we can just bypass that completely. So there we go. Now, what's my gross profit percentage? Well, you can make an assumption around what your gross profit is, but here's the thing with SAP Business One, as I start creating the formal documents, because remember, this is a sales opportunity. The next step might be to create a sales quotation, and the sales quotation is going to link to your inventory, and then as a result of that linkage to your inventory or to a service invoice, it's going to then pick up the gross profit calculation automatically from there. So I'm going to leave all of these things blank and let the system pull those things in as I go and create them later. I can put in a level of interest. In this case, I want to define my levels of interest, so I can say warm, and I can say this is my sort level 1, and update. I can then say I have hot, which is 2, update, and then I could say smokin'. So in this particular case, this is a really super hot lead that I want to get out in the hands of my salespeople as soon as possible. So I'll say update. Now I've spoken to this particular customer and I think this is a smoking hot lead. So obviously I want to get it out in the hands of my salespeople as quickly as possible. Then of course I can go through and I can start putting in my additional information. I can allocate this to my sales person. So what am I doing now? I've created the sales opportunity, but what I now want to do is start recording that sales opportunity moving through my sales process. In Business One, I've predefined that sales process. And you can see in here, these are the stages that I've defined in my sales process. We generate a lead, we go to first meeting, second meeting, quotation, negotiation, and order. So I want to track as this opportunity goes through all of those stages. In this case, it's a lead, and you can see this is where that percentage calculation comes from. So I can say when it's a lead, in terms of my forecasting, I want to track that at 6% weighting. Well, I'm a binary forecaster, remember. It's either all or it's nothing. So I can say here, I'm going to track it at 100%. Okay? So it's a 100% chance of closing. Again, totally up to you how you manage that. And then I can link it to a document. So let's say during this process, I actually created a sales quote. Well, I can link that as well. I'm not going to. I'm just going to go ahead now and add that record. And that's it. That's now done. I now have, from this campaign, I now have a sales opportunity linked directly to it. I'll go ahead and say update. And that's now the process completed. And you can see my operation was completed successfully. So let's go back and review what we did. We went in, we created our campaign. We selected all of the people that we wanted to execute this campaign with. I generated the campaign into a list because I want to take that list and use an external tool to run the campaign. I've then gone on from that and I've started my campaign, and I've already started to receive inbound inquiries. So now, if I close my campaign wizard and I look at my campaign, I'll go and navigate back using my navigation buttons to campaign number 3. And at any point in time, I can go and look at this campaign, scroll across, and I can immediately see these were the people who I executed the campaign with. Here is a customer who has responded, and this response generated a sales opportunity. Okay, so hopefully that's fairly clear. So that is the campaign wizard, and showing how the campaign wizard then links to the additional areas in SAP Business One. So there you have it. That's the campaign management functionality inside SAP Business One.